Ahoy, matey. Welcome to the Pirates of the Caribbean podcast. My name is David Cordingly, and as you can already tell, this podcast is all about pirates. Now, I've been taking some notes about pirates over the years, and it's very interesting. Now, you may know some like Blackbeard and other people like that, but I've been taking notes on other people and other pirates. It's about not just how they lived, it's also about what they did, what happened, things like that. And it's gonna get like into their little details of their life. One of the pirates I'll be talking about is a guy named Francis Drake. Francis Drake later became one of the greatest English pirates of all time, and that was during the Elizabeth era. The Elizabeth era started in the year 1958 to the year 1903. In the 1570s, a place called Nombre de Dios was a crucial treasure port on the Spanish Main, and it contained treasure, of course. So Drake planned to rob it. In 1571, he sent a reconnaissance man who was dressed like a merchant to go inspect the harbor as well as the king's treasure house. He made contact with some escaped black slaves called Cimarrones who lived in the surrounding jungle, and they did not like the Spaniards, so they wanted revenge. In 1572, July, he returned to Nombre de Dios. He had small ships, two of them, the Pasco and the Swan, and only 73 men. He anchored the ships behind a coastal landform. Around 3 a.m., they had started their attack. They split into two groups. One was led by his brother John Drake, and they created a diversion. Francis led the actual attack. He played drums and trumpets while they were attacking the harbor, so it sounded like they were attacking with a much larger force. Then things went wrong. A group of Spanish soldiers opened fire and had hit Drake in the thigh. He had ignored the pain and he had led his crew to the treasure house on the waterfront. They prepared to open the doors using force, but instead they had been met with a thunderstorm, causing them to take shelter. Now, their gunpowder was compromised and the guns could not work anymore. But he gave his team a pep talk, and after that, in 1573, he finally was able to rob the treasure house. What I think is interesting is that Drake did not give up. Him and his brother, it took 2 years just to rob that one place. And eventually, they had ended up with 100,000 pounds. Today, that cost would be around 37 million pounds, which in American dollars would be around $42.5 million. I think it's inspiring how much dedication Drake took to just rob one place that he wanted to hold up. He could have moved to any other place because he carried on later and he robbed ships and even more. Like, let's see, Drake had robbed a ship called the Cacafuego, weird name for a ship, and he took about 762,000 pesos, which in American today would be about $12 million. Nowhere near what he robbed beforehand in the king's treasure house, but still quite a lot. Drake wasn't like a pirate like Blackbeard or any other traditional pirates like Captain Kidd, but he was more like Captain Columbus. He waved the flag of Queen Elizabeth during his raids because he was more like a conqueror. Because when he returned back to England, he was knighted by the Queen Elizabeth, and Queen Elizabeth took all the other money that he had stolen, which was around, 500,000 euros or pounds, and today that would be about $68 million. Of course, the Queen had given him some money and let him keep 10,000 among himself and 8,000 to his crew. As I said, he was not a traditional pirate, but if you want a traditional pirate, in 1723, there was a ship called the Princess Gallery, and there was a pirate ship that was approaching them. Now, the captain of the ship, John Wickestead, decided that the ship had no match against the pirate ship because it was more of a ship that carried slaves. The pirates that had robbed the ship, the captain was called George Lowther. And they wanted the gold, but they didn't know that it was a slave ship. So the surgeon, John Crawford, and the second mate, his name was Goldsmith Blowers. They were held down to the floor, and they had fuses lit between their fingers, and the pirates had used that method as like torture, mental torture, to ask them where the gold was kept. Instead, they did get gold, so they got the gold, but they also removed 11 slaves valued at about $500. Now, what's interesting that I wrote in my notes, get this, that the pirates had actually asked two of the people on the ship to join their pirate crew. They were forced to, and that was the mate of the surgeon, William Gibson's, and the mate of the carpenter, James Sedgwick. And also two others, Robert Corp and Henry Wynn, had decided to join the pirates on their own accord, more or less. Now, of course, there were also pirate women, of course. I put two pictures in my little notes that from the National Maritime Museum from Greenwich. One of them is a picture of Mary Read, who was a former soldier, and she was actually pregnant, but she died of a fever in Jamaican prison after a trial. But she was still a pirate. And another one was named Anne Bonny, who became the wife or lover of a pirate called Calico Jack. I put this in my notes because I feel like they're not represented enough and all the movies are just about women. Anyways, I think this is a very inspiring story that shows pirates are